why it broke through gamer containment, and what it really exposes about the future of entertainment and celebrities. The clavicular Bibi Netanyahu gym maxing allegations are now just the latest controversy coming out of Israel. Taco Bell is now being investigated in connection to the Cyclospora explosive diarrhea parasite. And what really happens now that Trump named the U.S. guardian of the Strait of Hormuz as more strikes are being carried out. We're talking about all of that and even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. Silence is not consent. That is just one of the now huge flashpoints around this whole moist critical technoblade LARP tuber trend and controversy that has completely spiraled out of control. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about here, and trust me, that's completely normal. I didn't know this world existed until about a week ago. LARP tubers are these people who LARP or imitate famous YouTubers, copying their look, their voice, their cadence, kind of everything about them. And actually, one of the first ones you might have seen go viral back in May appears to be Larpiplier, who impersonates huge YouTuber Markiplier. Hello, everybody. My name is Larpiplier, and welcome to Let's Play Slender Auspice. Since then, you've had a lot more popping up, mimicking PewDiePie, Moist Critical, Leafy is Here, and a ton of others. For a while, and still, for many, it generally seemed like good fun. But then, you had someone crossing into different territory, where people say, okay, there's the LARP tuber community, and then there's this thing, because someone started LARPing as Technoblade. And Technoblade, I mean, he was one of the most beloved Minecraft creators on YouTube. He had over 10 million subs while he was alive, he had content for years, and then he got cancer. And at first, he announced it in the most Technoblade way ever. Of all the phone calls I've made, nobody took the news worse than my health insurance provider. They've been inconsolable for weeks. They were like, you got what? No! Several months later, in 2022, his dad appeared in a video to announce Technoblade, or Alex, had died at the age of 23.
I got down on my knee at his bedside, and I said to him, you've done so much for so many people, and if you want to now, you can rest. He lived about another 8 hours after that.
And so following that, just this community was absolutely heartbroken. The dad, he's been very active in the community ever since. They've been raising money for cancer research. The channel actually has now over 20 million subscribers. And all of that, it brings us to the current controversy, because you have this LARP tuber by the name of TechnoLARP appearing, and for comparison, here's a real Technoblade. But first, it's a pig. It's a plane. It's Technoblade on sale now. I wake up on Monday, I stab celebrities in Minecraft, and then I go to sleep for another week, because what else is there to do? And then here's TechnoLARP. I'm TechnoLARP, and you might be like, TechnoLARP, that's a stupid name. Well, this community is this growing community that really loves this concept. As you would expect, there are also a lot of people who are just really hurt with the whole concept of imitating a dead person like this, especially because he hadn't gotten permission from Technoblade's dad. Even Technolarp admitting in a since deleted post that he had reached out to the dad but got no response, though he argued that he also wasn't asked to stop, saying, we don't know his thoughts yet, let's give him time to figure out if he likes it or not. But also there, you had many who just weren't convinced. And then with that, you had Moist Critical giving this thing a whole huge boost when he did a video on it.
So he's taken that silence as like a thumbs up to keep doing it in the meantime. Like, I feel like if you cared enough about it, you'd probably wait to hear his thoughts on it instead of still just going hog wild with it.
But you also, with Technoblade's dad eventually responding, posting on Reddit, have been avoiding addressing this for a while now. We just don't know how to react to this. I mean, certainly it's flattering to Techno, but like, what am I supposed to do? I just don't know what to say to him. Anyway, my response is inconclusive. I'm still ruminating on the whole thing. So even though that wasn't a firm no, you had several other Minecraft YouTubers and a lot of people out there arguing that the post showed that he was clearly uncomfortable. And even some criticizing TechnoLARP for putting this dad in the position, speculating that he felt pressure not to come straight out and tell TechnoLARP to stop, because then all of a sudden he might be an enemy of part of that community. Now, in his defense, you have people noting that TechnoLARP claimed that he wasn't a replacement for Technoblade, saying that he was just an obvious knockoff to entertain people. And then also with this, you had critics pointing out that he went as far as to collaborate with one of Technoblade's friends, Skeppy, arguing that that crosses the line into replacement territory.
I am not the speed regen. Speed and regen. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yes! So he's actively trying to collab with Technoblade's friends while pretending to be their deceased friend. Like, that's some, like, Skinwalker type shit. Like, that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I feel like the guy's probably approaching it with good intentions, but I still find it to just be off-putting.
And actually, during a subsequent live stream, you had TechnoLARP jumping into the chat, and they started arguing.
Dogs and my family's and friends. Other LARP tubers are also under attack. Oh, that's awful. I'm sorry to hear that. You were reading this some context and made me mad. I know you meant well. Is the context that Skeppy reached out to you? Because I didn't miss that. That is there. I just didn't find that to be an important thing to mention because it's not who reached out to who. It's the fact that you still did it in the first place, man.
And then after this, Good Voice Critical made a follow-up video where he doubled down on his critiques. Because also one of the other big questions that's been hovering around is whether Technolarp has been profiting off of this concept. And on Twitter, you had him claiming that his YouTube videos were demonetized and he'd only earn money if Technoblade's dad gave permission.
Because again, so many people like myself were under the impression that all of this was done with no like financial gain on his own end or anything like that, just all money going to charity through this. Well, that's a half truth. The charity money is generated through the streams that he does. So he has a charity donation link in the Tiltify. And then right under that, he has a personal donation link where you can donate to Technolarper himself, the guy doing this. And then at the very bottom, he even has a sponsored section, server hosting by Prism Nodes. Use code LARP at checkout for 30% off on any purchase. And he did even say on stream that, yeah, that's there, but the charity donations far eclipse the personal ones that he's received. So you are financially benefiting from it.
Meanwhile, as far as Technoblade's dad, you actually kind of defending Technolarp, at least against doxing and threats that were apparently happening, calling it messed up and absolutely not okay. And then had him finally saying on our stream in a lengthy Reddit post, saying, when this was first brought to me by one of Alice's YouTube friends, I was under the impression that it might be a one-time thing. However, this has continued for several weeks, and it is now clear for saying that is a different thing from a true dad in the situation is complicated by a simple truth. Despite being techno dad, I cannot speak unilaterally on behalf of all of Alice's family, friends, and fans who live now have a variety of branches that are careful consideration and reach out for one thing or the other. So when Technoblade's father and this person knows what we stand up and I'm asking where that's placed up. So any question seeks to listen permission for this or any similar persona now or in the future as they do. And I encourage any mention that you want to show us a sincere presentation of your authentic self, always be better than indication of someone else. And I can also have this is not moving like sort of line. I do not believe there was malicious intent. It's that what you saw is that with the technology response at first, it's actually taken down for about a guideline. Now, you're cleverly being a this way. This guy don't know how to end answer. I don't like mine if it was yes or no. I respected any decision, everything I did. It's not for some crazy evil scheme. I was just trying to have fun, doing the LARP trend and everything, making content similar to what my favorite trenders have. I can't really change how I sound. My voice, because it's my normal voice. I can definitely take off the skin. I can change the name. You were telling me that you want me to just be myself and make videos in my own personality, which I think is a really good idea. So that you guys can just go and try it out. That being said, there's going to be hate on His friend should try to get rid of the evidence that they with him pointed at, because as we know, many in his family asking for the series that almost immediately, Daniel's mom, Rebecca Irving, had a feeling that something bad happened to her son, and when he still hadn't come home the next day, she filed a missing persons report with the Rowlett Police Department. And while you had the local police issuing a community alert, it wasn't until 3 days later that Daniel's body was found and recovered from the lake. From there, you had the Dallas Police Department taking over the death investigation, and the medical examiner concluding that Daniel's cause of death was drowning, and it was determined to be an accident. Except, if it was an accident, why didn't anyone call for help or come forward when it happened? Or what were Daniel's two friends doing? It seems like the police also asked that question because last week, Lucas Roper and the unnamed teenager were arrested in connection with the case, specifically on charges of evidence tampering, which is a third-degree felony. Because according to the affidavit, when Daniel drowned, Roper and the other teenager panicked and took off, throwing Daniel's clothes in the tree line and getting rid of his cell phone. Roper reportedly deleted all the conversations that he had with Daniel that day from his phone, saying that both he and the other teen, they were worried that they were going to get in trouble and they panicked. But also, you're seeing that explanation and the charges of evidence tampering not being enough for many, including Daniel's family. You have his mom, Tameka, saying there is absolutely more to this story than what they've gotten so far.
If you are not guilty of a crime, why would you throw away his clothes and delete messages and not even call his mother?
And they're also calling for murder charges as if their attorney promising to conduct an independent investigation.
This family has lost confidence in the system that is supposed to protect them. This family has a distrust of the Dallas Police Department. They have not given this death of an 18-year-old Daniel Irving the urgency it deserves and demands. He was a member of his swim team. He was a strong, healthy young athlete. For these two suspects to say he drowned and they left, doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Something smells off to us.
And then you're also seeing the family coming down on the police about their handling of Daniel's death, with his sister saying that the case was treated with no sense of urgency and it's left her family in agony for months now. And that is a criticism that's been echoed by other activists as well, including Dominique Alexander, who's the founder of the Next Generation Action Network. And you had him writing an open letter to the Dallas Police Department slamming their handling of the case and also going after the Rowlett Police Department for dragging their feet, saying a young black student goes missing and instead of immediate action, his family is met with delay and dismissal. And I think we are not going to accept excuses. We are not going to accept delays, and we are certainly not going to accept a narrative that asks this family to move on without answer. Justice requires action. Action must happen now. While you have the police still maintaining that Daniel's death was an accident, as this case has gained traction, you're seeing a lot of people drawing comparisons between this and Nolan Wells' case, which is another heartbreaking case that we've covered now a few times. And you have many people saying that both of these boys, they deserve justice, their families, they deserve answers, and their deaths can't be swept under the rug. And we're waiting for answers and updates, of course. Our hearts go out to the family of Daniel Irving and Nolan Wells. And then there's so much more that we've got to dive into in just a minute. But first, let me thank a sponsor and say, we live in a world where it's easier than ever to consume news, but also somehow harder than ever to know if you're getting the full picture and also to see where other people might be coming from. Having covered just countless major stories over the years, I've learned that having one source, it is very rarely enough. And that's part of the reason why I use today's sponsor, Ground News. To take the reports of the latest U.S. strikes against Iran, for example. Some headlines have framed it as protecting regional shipping routes. Others have focused on the failed ceasefire, retaliation, and escalation risks. And in a lot of things, and especially in war, the same event, it can look strategy, diplomacy, or escalation, depending on the outlet. While multiple perspectives may be accurate, it also can leave you with a very different impression. That's one of the things that Ground News helps us see, right? It compares how hundreds of news outlets are covering the exact same story side by side. It also shows their political bias ratings, factuality ratings, and who owns each publication, giving you some valuable context behind the headlines. So definitely, I'll say one of the features I love the most is a blind spot feed, which flags stories heavily covered by one side, but the other side's barely touching. Right, actually, that Mamdani Little Italy story from yesterday, fantastic example. Those were barely covered by the right, and it's kind of important to look over that fence sometimes if you don't find yourself using those sources a lot, just to see what's happening in that land. So Ground News becomes one of the places that I check because I'd rather understand why coverage differs than just assume that the first headline, it tells me everything. Especially because algorithmically, it seems like so many of these platforms just want to keep us in tiny bubbles. So hey, in addition to being, of course, a daily watcher of the Phil Franco Show, you can head to ground.news/Franco or scan that QR code to get 40% off unlimited access to the Vantage plan, which is the one I use. And then diving back into the news, the first line for this story, I want you to know I'm not having a stroke. This is actually a real news story. You now have Clavicular claiming that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants to gym max with him to improve his public image. Right, that's coming directly from Clavicular, who we don't know as this massive, controversial, looks-maxing streamer, but he's just kind of blown up over the last year, and you had him claiming that he had dinner with Netanyahu's advisors, as well as other tech and U.S. officials, and
I was fine with talking with one of BB's people about looks maxing, how he could looks max. That's what they asked. They said, hey, BB's been having a lot of trouble with humanizing himself to the younger generation. They think he's too old and out of shape. Would you want to do like a gym stream with him or something like that? And if I had any ideas about like his fitness, this thing, because he's getting into sports or something. And I was like, sure, man, I'd be happy to help.
You had Clavicular saying this on a stream while in Israel, which he spent the last few days visiting, and also there are like a number of other controversies happening. But as far as this gym bro sesh, you have a number of people kind of just not believing him. I think it's kind of hard to imagine, these two in a stream together, pumping iron, and Netanyahu somehow walking out with a rehabilitated image. Counterpoint, this is also the same Netanyahu that did the Milk Boys podcast, who also, I'll say, there was some backlash in the media when it was first reported that Clavicular met with Netanyahu's advisors. And so that one could dissuade Bibi from taking a break from bombing people and following through on this idea. And two, it brings us one of the other controversies because Clavicular has been accused of anti-Semitism in the past. Because while he's known for looks-maxing content, which is controversial in its own right because it goes to extremes to improve your looks and taking supplements and even smashing your bones, or with being this kind of internet subculture that's especially popular among incels, he's been seen as incredibly controversial for that, as well as numerous other issues and other scandals, but also over his connections to the manosphere and online figures. He's been on stream with Nick Fuentes, who's known for his anti-Semitic views, and actually connected to that. Well, he, Fuentes, the Tate brothers, and others, they faced a ton of backlash earlier this year after getting a Miami club to play the song Hail Hitler by Kanye West and sing along. And so the fact that Clavicular was in Israel and potentially meeting with people close to Netanyahu, it caused a ton of debate. Even some wondering how or why he was even let into the country at all.
So we came here to explore County and kind of show that it's a really fun city. How can you not talk? That's like a song for a journalist. Yes, tactic. No. So if you're gonna be negative, and ask about like the whole situations that are not so positive, then I really don't want to touch it.
Last January is not that you got kicked out of the club. Why not clean the page?
So why don't you clean the page and talk about how much I've done for this country's reputation, because it's an utter shambles. This is the most ridiculous thing ever. I just woke up. I don't want to be talking to someone who's going to be rude. This interview is just apologize to me, or why don't you apologize to me for wasting my time?
Why don't you apologize? Just apologize. That's it.
And also with this, just because he's trying to dodge a backlash, it doesn't mean everyone else has or gets to. And I say that because you're seeing some reports now claiming that IDF soldiers being punished for appearing in particular streams in Israel. Right? That soldier is Shira Braun. She was seen on a number of streams. They were seen walking with arms around Johnson. She's now facing disciplinary action. Right? According to Israeli media, she's no longer allowed to do social media unit, with some reports even saying that she's been demoted to being a cook. You have all of this going down as you Levicular repeatedly insisting that his trip to Israel, it's not political. In fact, you even had him slamming a Free Press reporter who wrote about why he's in the country writing, essentially advocating for the world to share his political opinions with the massive audience I have is wildly irresponsible. I'm very conscious of the influence I have, which is why I only speak about topics such as looks maxing, which I spent years of my life researching. And while I personally am very open to the nuance around the conversation of, hey, you don't have to force everyone to speak on things politically, you are visiting a country during a time of war. You're talking about pumping iron with a man that many believe is a war criminal. And while you personally probably only care about the additional views from the controversy of it all, or maybe you're actually interested in talking to Netanyahu about, I don't know, what fucking lifts in his shoes so he can join the 6-footer club, he would actively be using you to try to normalize everything that he and his government is doing to a very young, impressionable audience. So also, I'm not going to say that's your entire audience, because something that we saw with the whole Netanyahu Delboy interview was a lot of people were just not on board. So much so that the audience smacked them up, so they essentially had to do a humiliation ritual. And we saw like Kyle and Snidey, who's a real person apparently, having to just eat shit in a follow-up video. But as far as Levicular, right, in recent streams he's talking about how he completed Israel soon, and that he's not actually left already, and not the next country he said he wants to go to is Russia. So we have him saying, you know, he's not interested in talking politics. It does appear to be obvious that he's seeking politically contentious places to visit the street, to monetize, to audience, right? I mean, ultimately, time will tell how all this plays out, both with wherever he goes next and the things that happen there, as well as everything that went down in Israel. And then also, we should talk about, you know, while you've had Levicular strips stirring up controversy, there are a lot of Israelis right now that are thrilled with another American, and that is Donald Trump, right? And that's because you have him relaunching his war against Iran and reimposing his blockade on the country, all while threatening to upend literally centuries of American policy, supporting freedom of navigation around the world. And actually, despite everything, it doesn't seem any closer to meeting his original war aims, all while traffic through the Strait of Hormuz it's come down to its lowest level in a month. So yes, Trump, he's continuing to claim that it is safe to travel, and he claimed on social media that the Hormuz Strait is open and will remain open with or without Iran, and announcing the return of a blockade affecting Iran's ships and customers, saying all other countries will have fair and open use of the Strait. So then with that, also adding that the U.S. would now be known as the guardian of the Hormuz Strait and will be reimbursed at the rate of 20% of all cargo shipped for any and all costs necessary to do the job of providing safety and security in this very volatile section of the world. And then later, I'm going into more detail, talking to reporters in the Oval Office, saying,
I want to be reimbursed because we're protecting a very rich portion of the world. We're spending money. And so what we've done is we are going to be reimbursed for protection.
in addition to going against hundreds of years of U.S. policy, he is then also contradicting his administration's own position that there shouldn't be any tolls or fees on shipping through the Strait, which is something that stated unequivocally with Secretary of State Marco Rubio just a few weeks ago. No country is allowed to charge tolls or fees on an international waterway. But with all this, you have Trump, in the eyes of many, legitimizing Iran's claims that it should have the right to charge tolls in the Strait. And actually, Iran's foreign minister responding to Trump's announcement with his own post on social media writing, Otis is absolutely right. Whoever provides secure and safe passage of commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz should be compensated for this service. Iran has always been the guardian of the Strait and will remain so forever. 20% is, of course, too much. We will be fair. But with all this, you had CENTCOM announcing that the blockade would be back in effect starting today, right, July 14th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But it didn't mention these at least yet. Yet, as you're saying, the ships near the Gulf of Oman and Strait of Hormuz should contact U.S. naval forces, and that additional information could be provided to commercial mariners through a full notice. At least for now, you're still seeing that just very few ships are willing to go anywhere near the space. Even only 10 vessels passing through the Strait yesterday. That is the lowest level in a month. And the French have more than 103 vessels a day that would pass through the Strait. We're connected to that line crew of the international benchmark for oil prices that apparently we're all now having to focus on. So around 9% yesterday after Trump's announcement, another 2.5% today, and roughly $85 a barrel. Keep that all this coming as missiles and drones, they've been flying on a daily basis. This last Wednesday, Trump declared that the ceasefire with Iran was over after a new round of fighting on Friday. Only notified Congress of the Iran. Of course, this is really the same. The reason for the distinction is that the War Powers Act requires the commander-in-chief to report lawmakers within 2 days of engaging U.S. forces in hostilities. And then from there, he has 60 days to either finish the job or get permission from Congress with the possibility of a 30-day extension. See, in terms of lawmakers with the April 7th ceasefire with Iran, it stopped the 60-day clock that started on February 28th. And then his latest update, he claimed that a new 60-day clock has started with strikes on July 7th, even though you got so many experts rejecting the idea that this is in any way valid, especially since the U.S. and Iran exchanged fire during this so-called ceasefire. So the 60-day clock thing kind of assumed that the initial strikes were okay in at least some way, but many experts have argued that attacks against Iran violated domestic and international law. From the very beginning. We don't think all this. The back and forth has been pretty much nonstop since Saturday with the Iran fire. What it said was a warning shot that struck a commercial ship in the region. But that ship reportedly sent to pass through the strait on the road to Oman, which is the one recommended by the United States, but rejected by Iran. Which is that also one of the reasons why Iran has accused the U.S. of violating the memorandum of understanding, or the MOU, that was signed last month between the two countries. And then with this, after the U.S. retaliating with multiple overnight strikes in Iran, you then also had the country's top negotiator responding to U.S. strikes, posting a screenshot of the text of that deal, with him highlighting the section saying that it would be up to Iran to make arrangements for the safe passage of commercial vessels through the strait. You then also had the regime responding by launching attacks in several countries in the Middle East and declaring the Strait of Hormuz closed, which then of course prompted another round of U.S. strikes the next night, which in turn led Iran to follow up with more strikes and said targeted American military facilities in Jordan, Bahrain, and Kuwait. And then all of that, it brings us back to yesterday, with a few hours after announcing the blockade, CENTCOM said that it had begun the third consecutive night of strikes against Iran, and Trump said that shortly before that is that Trump told right-wing radio host Hugh Hewitt that he expected strikes to continue today as well, saying,
We're gonna hit them very hard tonight, and we're gonna hit them hard tomorrow. There's not a damn thing they can do about it. They have nothing. They have nothing going other than they have big mouths.
You also had him seemingly completely dismissing the MOU that he previously claimed made him the first president to make peace with Iran and would bring peace and security to the whole region, but he now said that it was just a test, and adding,
Look, memorandum of understanding when you're dealing with sleazebags don't mean much. And they don't mean much when you're dealing with honorable people too, because it's a memorandum of understanding. It doesn't mean much.
unfortunately, back will say Trump arrangements, and you say this, but if there is a thing that we've learned by now, it's that, when Trump says something, it really doesn't mean it. Like, even just the past, less than 48 hours yesterday, right, he was talking about his administration, they'd be adopting an unprecedented world-changing policy in charge of tolls for passage through the strait. Well, today, Paul's literally boil his glowing like never before, unless he means barely, thanks to the U.S. military on the strait. He then also had him say, based on highly productive conversations with Middle East leadership, I decided to replace the 20% United States reimbursement fee with trade and investment deals that the various Gulf states will be making into the United States. So, of course, there also just happens to be no information about these deals, whether they're even real or not. All Trump's really done is kind of damage the U.S.